Howdy, and welcome to episode 60 of T-Shirts and Shawls. I'm Karen, and today is Thursday, September 13th, 2018. I don't have to check the date because I know what day it is. It's my birthday! I'm not going to tell you exactly how old I am. I will give you a clue. I am the answer to life, the universe, and everything. So that is a little reference that you can, if you don't know what it is, you can Google it. You'll find the answer. And I know I mentioned this in an earlier episode. This is a birthday I've actually been looking forward to because it's fun to be able to say that. I had a friend a few years ago who turned this age, and that's what she posted on Facebook. So I thought, oh, that's a really fun idea. I'm looking forward to when I turn that age and I can do the same. So that is now. Anyway, that being said, I've got lots of things that I want to talk about in this episode. So we will go ahead and jump in and get started. We're actually going to start with what I'm knitting. I'm going to skip the t-shirt section because the shirt I'm wearing actually goes with one of the questions I was asked in the questions for Karen thread. So I will talk about it then. And I need to go back through my list of shawls I have not yet talked about on the podcast and pick one of those. So hopefully I will have one for next time. So what I'm knitting. So if you've been watching the podcast, you'll know that I have been participating in Tour de Sock, which is a competition where there are 6 stages, 6 different sock patterns, and each one has a start date where the pattern drops, and you have a specific time limit of when to finish that pair of socks. Roughly, it's about 10 days or so, and then the next stage starts. So I started out strong, and I finished the first 3. Not super speedy, but I did finish each of those first 3 by the deadline, and came up with 2 pair of socks that I love for me, and 1 pair of socks that was too small for me and fit my son. So all was good. And then stage 4 dropped, and it was color work and toe up, which are 2 things that are not my strongest points. And I also was just busy because it was right before yarn crawl. And so my progress kind of screeched to a halt. I got maybe a little over halfway through the foot on that sock. The first sock, not even the finishing the complete sock. And I did not finish that stage. And then the next stage came, and it was a sock that I really do like. And actually, I can show you these as I'm talking to them. The colorwork sock I left out in the other room, so I did show it previously on the podcast. There's been no other progress since I showed it to you guys. So the 5th stage dropped, and I'm really, really loving this sock. I'm using a sparkly yarn. It's got cables, little bits of lace. I showed you this last time. I am, I think, a little further than I was last time. I've started the heel. This is still the first sock. I started the heel. I'm about halfway through that heel flap. And I really wanted to finish this one because I'm really liking how these are turning out. It looks like they're going to fit me. So all seemed to be well, except I just did not have time. There were other things that were a little more pressing priority-wise, and so I did not get these done. So I failed on stage 5. This I am planning to continue. Like I said, I like how these are turning out. I'm definitely going to finish this pair of socks. It's just not going to be, top priority since it's no longer part of the competition, but they will get done. The colorwork sock, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to frog that one. I've decided. Not because it's color work and not because it's toe up, but because it's too small. I tried it on my foot and it just does not go on my foot. So I don't really feel like working on a color work sock for Luke. I don't know that he would necessarily appreciate that. And it's also not in colors that he really loves. So yeah, I think that at first I thought that maybe I would just cast on a larger size or on larger needles, but I think that I'm just going to not complete that sock, which is disappointing. My goal in doing Tour de Sock was to complete all 6 pairs. Maybe not, the fastest, but I wanted to complete all of them. So, and I have not met my goal. And then I thought, well, even if I don't finish them by the deadline, maybe I'll at least still finish all of them. But deciding to frog that one and not recast on means that I'm not going to meet that goal. But I am okay with that. I have made peace with that. And I've just decided that it's just not the sock for me. And the yarn deserves better. So I will reuse the yarn, because there's 2 skeins of yarn since it was color work. I will reuse those yarns for something else. But sock 5, I will finish eventually. Then we had sock 6, which is a really unusual construction. It is a, so this is the toe, and then you go around using short rows and have kind of this spiraling effect. So stage 6 ends today. I don't remember exactly which time. I think it's noon. Anyway, obviously this is the first sock. I am not finishing this stage either. My yarn's all wrapped around. I just got to the point where I'm ready to start the heel of the first sock. So I really, really love the way this yarn is working up. It is not a striping yarn. It is a variegated yarn, but because the color runs in the variegation are a little bit longer, they're not random. It is creating a striped look because of the short rows. So I really, really like how this is turning out. A lot of people on my team have been talking about how the socks don't fit very well, that this is kind of tight because since it is kind of knit basically around, so it's kind of side to side rather than up from the toe, it doesn't stretch quite as much that way. And so some people are having trouble with fit. I did, because of some of the experiences I'd had with some of the earlier socks, I did pick the large size on this. So I'm hopeful I am able to put this on my foot, but once you get a heel on it and try to put it on, that's really the real test. So at this point, I do plan to continue working on this pair of socks because I do like the effect. I do like how this is turning out, and it is an interesting construction. Obviously not by the deadline, but eventually someday these will get finished. At least that is the goal. So toward a sock, overall, I think it was a fun experience. I did accomplish some of my goals. I knit more pairs of socks in a shorter amount of time than I have in quite a while. I knit patterned socks, which I, again, have not done for a long time. Because mostly I just use self-striping yarn and vanilla socks, just a basic simple sock, and let the yarn do the work. So it's been a long time since I've done a patterned sock, so that was good to do that. I learned several new constructions, several new techniques, some of the kind of decorative cuffs, a new cast on. So I've definitely learned some things in tortoise sock, which is definitely a fabulous goal. So I am happy that I decided to do it. However, gonna be straight up honest, I do not see myself doing tortoise sock again. Possibly, signing up for it, paying the entry fee and getting the patterns, because they are some interesting patterns. But I don't think that I'm going to do the competition part where you've got the time frame that you're supposed to make each of the socks in. And mostly that is because, realized that I am not very fast, and at first it was a little disheartening to see how quickly people were getting through the projects and realizing, oh my gosh, I'm barely even, on the first sock, and people have finished the complete pair. But I was able to get past that and just, not worry about comparing my speed to other speed. But also because I felt like whenever I sat down to knit, that is what I had to work on, because it was under that deadline and that time limit. And I felt like if I worked on another project, I was letting myself down, letting my team down, even though I don't think that my team was even though I was on the competitive a team of our 2 teams. I don't really feel like anyone was really seriously competitive, and if anyone was, I apologize for letting you down. But it was definitely that feeling of pressure, that feeling that I had to work on these socks, and that was the only thing I could work on. And I also, I mean, there was a weekend that I worked on the purple ones with all the cables and the beads that my in-laws were visiting, and I basically kind of sat on the couch the whole time. I mean, so I was visiting with them, but I sat on the couch the whole weekend and I was working on those socks. And we didn't really, I mean, we don't usually go out and do lots of things when they're visiting, but, you know, I didn't make any push to go anywhere because I wanted to sit down and knit on those socks. So it kind of took over my life for a while, which I think is also why the last few stages kind of fizzled out, because I finally decided that I couldn't sustain that for the, what was it, 2.5 months of the competition. It's a long time to really be devoted to sock knitting. So anyway, I think it was a good experience. I'm glad that I went ahead and tried it. I'm glad that I learned things, but not gonna do the competition part again. Next year though, if I start saying that I might sign up for a team, would you guys remind me to watch this episode again to see some of my reasons for not wanting to do the competition part again? Because I definitely want to remember this, because it was kind of stressful, and I wasn't able to knit on other things because of that. So now that I have kind of pushed that stress aside, and Tortoise Sock is technically over, I have been able to work on some other things. So one of those things that I've been working on is my boxy. So this is just basically it's a pullover sweater that is just meant to be a very comfy sweater, kind of the thing that if you're sitting around at home and maybe a little bit chilly, it's something to pull on and just to cuddle up with. So it is a very oversized sweater. Although the sleeves, I think it comes down and is a little tight, I think at the elbow. So I think there's a little bit of structure there in the sleeves. But basically I have been knitting in the round forever and ever and ever. And because it is an oversized sweater, sorry, there's something in my eye. Because it is an oversized sweater, that means that there are a lot of stitches on the needles, and I just knit around and around and around. And still working on the in the round. For the size I'm doing, it calls for 16 inches. I am at 14, so I'm getting there. I'm just 2 inches shy of the 16 inches. So I'm almost to the point where I can divide for the sleeves. And then instead of in the rounds, I'll be working flat. So you knit the front flat, and then you knit the back flat, and then you join them together, and then you add the sleeves. At least that's the basic idea. So I did think that because I am a shorter person, I thought, well, maybe I don't need the full 16 inches. Maybe 14 inches would be good. And so since this goes to the point basically of the underarm, I held it up to my underarm and looked to see like where it fell. And I feel like it's still just a little short. I think the design is supposed to be slightly cropped. Not like fully cropped, but a slightly short sweater. And I don't really want that because I think that I would just be trying to pull it down all the time because I don't really like short tops. So I think the 16 inches will actually be about right for me to get a sweater that is a little bit on the longer, or at least normal size instead of a shorter cropped sweater. So 2 more inches, and then I'll check them against myself to see if that's good, and then I will start dividing for the sleeves. So it's getting there, and my goal is to maybe have it finished by the time fall really kicks in. Probably not, since we are in September, but maybe I'll at least be able to wear it before summer comes back to Texas. We don't have a huge season of cooler weather, but hopefully I'll be able to get that done in time to wear it this year. So that is now become kind of almost a priority project, so that way I can hopefully get that done. I am still planning to finish my other cardigan, the Let Go cardigan. I just have the sleeves to go on it, and so I need to also work on that. But I wanted to start another project because I had not been doing anything for our quarterly knit along. So the quarter ends on the end of September, so September 30th, and I think I might be able to finish this by then. It is a DK weight yarn, so it is a bigger yarn, although it uses like 3 skeins of DK weight yarn, so I'm still using like 600 yards of yarn. So I don't know why I thought that maybe it would be faster. Anyway, so I wanted to get started on that so I could at least have started a project even if I don't finish it in the quarter. So the theme is any pattern that is was published in 2016 or earlier and which only has less than 20 projects on Ravelry. So this is 3 sheets, and I forgot to look up the designer name. I think it's Sarah Birch. I will look that up, obviously put it in the show notes. But it's called 3 Sheets, and it is a really pretty shawl that starts down here, and then it grows with increases, so it'll have kind of a asymmetrical triangular shape in the end, and it has cables. So there are the cables there, and then it uses basically some decreases and increases to create these kind of wave types of stitch patterns on that side. And I'm really enjoying this. It's it's fun to work on, and I like how it's turning out. I really like how the 3 cables are kind of diverging. They started at one point and they're growing apart from each other. So this is a fun project. There's also, there's a little cable on this edge as well, so it's kind of fun to put a cable right on the edge of the project. And the yarn is my yarn. This is my Cornwall base, which is 100% BFL, so that is Blue Face Leicester, a type of sheep breed. And I have worked a little bit with my Cornwall base, but not on a big project, so this is my first kind of project to use this base on. And I love BFL. It is not as soft as merino, but it stands up to wear a lot better. And I'm really enjoying this, even though it's not as soft as merino. It's still pretty soft. I love how it feels. It's got a lot of bounce to it, a lot of stretch, and you can really feel that in the yarn. I mean, you can see some of the stretch just with me pulling it, but feeling it is definitely really bouncy. So I like that too. And this is the Gnida colorway, so it's kind of an aqua color. And supposedly I'm going to use 3 skeins of this for the project. So we'll see how it goes. It's kind of one of those, it does tell you a number of repeats to do, but it also is a project that you could continue doing or not do as many depending upon how much yarn you want to use. So I'm going to kind of check the size of it. I've got not quite halfway through the number of repeats it asks, and then there's a section at the end as well. So I have to make sure that I leave enough yarn for that. But anyway, I'll kind of see what the size is and determine whether or not I'm going to follow what the pattern says for number of repeats, or if I want to do my a different, more or less. So that's a project that is also kind of a priority project since it is for the knit along. But if I finish it, I finish it. If I don't finish it by September 30th, then I don't, and that's okay. I do have the retreat that I'm leaving on for next week, so it will be something I bring with me, and maybe that means I will have more time to work on it and it will get done. We'll see. Speaking of the retreat, one of the things that we're doing is you can knit preemie hats that's going to be sent to, actually not just preemies because they're not always small, but basically going to a NICU at a local hospital near where the retreat is. And there's basically a competition for the for the retreat. There are various points that we've been able to earn over the past few months, and so you get points for each hat that you make. And I had bought yarn to make hats because they actually asked for acrylic, and so I did buy some yarn for it. And I have not made a single preemie hat, so I decided to go ahead and cast on. So I cast this on this morning. I just finished the ribbing. It's a 1x1 rib, and it's just going to be a very basic stockinette hat. Since it is a small baby hat, it's not going to take very long. I should be able to finish it. Probably will not be the thing that I work on tonight, but if I work on it like tomorrow morning, I'll probably get most of it done. So I could at least finish one hat to donate. Maybe I'll be able to get more done, but I would at least like to work on one. So those are the things that I currently have on my needles. There are projects that I want to cast on, but maybe I will and bring them with me for the retreat, but this should also give me a good set of projects to bring with me. I will obviously cast on a pair of vanilla socks, because that is always a good go-to project. And speaking of vanilla socks, I did actually finish the pair I was working on, so I will show you that next. Finished socks. This yarn is Brazen Stitchery in the Molly colorway, so Molly Weasley, a Harry Potter reference. And I intentionally started in the second sock. I think this one was the second sock. Don't even remember anymore. I intentionally started it at a slightly different place so they wouldn't be perfectly matching. And even though I did that, I did try to make where the heel and the toe started set up as much as possible the same number of stripes. So they're not perfectly matching, but they are very, very close. And that makes me, I like that. And I've been working on these socks. I forgot to double check Ravelry, but I think I started these back in February, which I feel terrible about because I really, really like these and I really wanted to work on them. But I guess there were socks that I was making for samples, for Roundtable Yarns, and other projects that I was working on, and these just did not get a lot of time. So they are done. I am happy. We are actually, this week has been rainy and for Texas chilly. I mean, the 70s is really not that chilly. It actually feels fabulous. But after we've been in the upper 90s and hundreds, it feels positively glacial almost. So it's getting to be the weather, the time of year for hand knitted socks. So excited to be able to add these to my sock drawer and to wear them very soon. So that means that I get to go through my stash of self-striping yarn and decide what vanilla socks I want to cast on next. I think that what I'm going to do, and I forgot to grab the skein, is I think it wasn't the first, but some of the first yarn that I got from Mustache was a Star Wars colorway that is so basically what she does for most of her socks is she has two half skeins that are wound in such a way that that you can match your socks. But some of the Star Wars ones she did kind of dual types of things where there are two different colorways. You have a half skein of two different colorways that technically kind of go together, at least character-wise. So I got the Luke and Anakin kind of dual socks. So they will be two technically different socks. And I think that's the one that I want to work on next. So I will go ahead and wind that yarn and get that in my sock project bag and work on that. So otherwise, I don't have any other finished objects except for something that Luke and I have been doing. So I don't have any other finished knitting projects. So for Luke's birthday, he got quite a few sets of perler beads. So Perler. They are also known as fuse beads or melty beads or some of those types of things. So basically there are these little plastic beads that various colors that you put together to form patterns and designs, and then you use an iron and literally melt them, and so they fuse together. So he had worked on a lot of those whenever he was in Lego camp. That's one of the projects that they sometimes do. So he really enjoyed doing them, and so we got several sets for his birthday. And I think that we've become a little bit obsessed by these. This past weekend, we spent a good chunk of Saturday working on some of the creations, and so I was mostly kind of helping him. He's done a lot of Minecraft types of things, but I found a pattern for BB-8, so I made a little Star Wars melty bead, and I also did a Stormtrooper, just the mask. I forgot to grab that because that's Luke's, but BB-8 I kind of want to keep and claim for myself. I really like the way he turned out. And then I decided, you know what? I bet there are patterns online that I can find and do lots of different things. And sure enough, I mean, go to Pinterest or Google and search for these types of things, and there are so many things that you can choose from. So of course I had to look for Doctor Who things. And I found My Doctor, so the 11th Doctor, and so I did a little melty bead of My Doctor. And then, and I've got all sorts of pages saved, pictures and pages saved for things that I want to do. I started searching for all my fandoms. I have some, obviously some other Doctor Who things. There's obviously a TARDIS that I'm going to do, and some other stuff. I have some Harry Potter things that I want to work on, and I realized at Knit Night that I hadn't looked up Hamilton melty bead types of things, and so I looked that up and found some really great ideas for that. And then I realized, you know what? Because these are like pixels, little dots, I will bet that there are cross-stitch patterns that I could use and make into these melty bead types of things. So there is somebody who sells cross-stitch patterns on Etsy that are little pixel people, and I will link to that Etsy shop in the show notes. I think it's Wee Little Stitches, WEE for Wee. I'm pretty sure that's the name of it. Anyway, so they have lots and lots of pixel people and lots of entertainment, so TV and movie types of things. And I bought several of their cross-stitch patterns, and last night I started working on one of them, and I only have one of the pair finished. This is a couple, and I don't have the other one finished. But this is Buttercup from The Princess Bride, and then later, today, tomorrow, later in the week, I will be making Wesley. So my Buttercup and Wesley. So that came from a cross-stitch pattern. I'm a little obsessed with these. We've been buying lots of different colors and having fun with them. It's something that I'm enjoying doing with Luke, and enjoying the creations. I don't really know, what do you do with these once you've made them? Do I frame them, hang them on the wall? Luke plays with them as if they're toys. So I'll have to kind of figure that out, because I'm kind of feeling like I'm going to have a bunch of these little pixel people. I bought the other cross-stitch patterns I bought were Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Dr. Horrible's Sing-Along Blog, and Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So those are the ones that I've started with, and then there are a whole bunch more that I have favorited. So anyway, so that's something that Luke and I have been working on, and it's fun. It's a project I can do with Luke, and he's excited about it, and I'm excited about it, and my husband's doing a little bit of it, so it's kind of fun for the whole family. For Roundtable Yarns news, I am getting ready to go to the Into the Wool Fiber Retreat. So I am leaving next week on Tuesday. Vendors, we have an opportunity to get there a day early. The retreat starts on Thursday, but we're kind of getting there on Wednesday. Partially so we can set up, and partially just to kind of get to know the other vendors and the organizers. So I think that will be fun. And so I'm leaving on Tuesday. I'm driving. It's going to be a long drive. But I still have a lot I still have to pack. I still have a lot to do to get ready for that. So just an FYI, as far as the online shop is concerned, I am going to remove most of the inventory from the online shop, probably on Monday afternoon. So that way, because where we are for the retreat, internet and Wi-Fi, and even just the phone reception is a little spotty. So I don't want to run the risk of potentially selling something at the retreat and also having someone online try to buy it, and not realize that somebody online had bought it and taking it out of the inventory. Anyway, it can create kind of a little bit of a mess if sales are happening in both places at the same time. So I think the easiest thing to do, since I won't be able to see if a sale comes through if the internet is not working, is just to remove most of the inventory. I will leave up things like the enamel pins, because I do have, at least at this point, enough of those to cover inventory if those get ordered. So the enamel pins, the pre-order types of things like the fundraiser for the Hemophilia Foundation, and the custom orders. So if you want to have Avalon dyed in Shame and Slander, which is a custom order someone recently just made, then you can still go ahead and do that while I'm gone. Obviously, you'll have to wait until I get back before I can dye that and mail it out. And I will put a banner on the website that says all of that information. But I just did want to give you a heads up. If there is something in the shop that you want to get that before Monday afternoon. Because otherwise it'll go offline and I will be bringing it with me to the retreat, and it may or may not sell. And then once I get home from the retreat, I'll put everything that's remaining back in the shop. And then after the retreat in November, I have the East Texas Fiber Festival. So basically I will be spending most of October doing a lot of dyeing and prep work for that. I also have the yarn club that is ongoing. The next shipment goes out Saturday. Saturday's the 15th, and that is the third shipment of 5. So it'll be at the halfway point when that one goes out. And I had just started dyeing the 4th shipment, so I probably won't get much more of that dyed between now and the retreat. So once I get back from the retreat, I'll be hitting the dye pots and finishing up the yarn club dyeing, because I like to have that done in advance. That way I don't have to worry about running into any issues right before it needs to ship. In fact, the stuff that I'm sending out this month, I've dyed. It's been dyed for over a month. I did that far in advance, so it's been waiting patiently for it to be sent out. Anyway, so that's kind of what I'm working on, what I have coming up. I do have good news for the next event after that, because between East Texas and the next event, there's a huge break, which is good. There's Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays, and then also just giving enough time to take a little bit of a break and then get back into the swing of things again. So I did get my official acceptance for DFW Fiberfest. So I think of it as my home Fiberfest, but it is such a fabulous and getting bigger and even more well-known and respected that I never want to take it for granted that I will be accepted as a vendor. So it's always a relief getting that email that says, yes, we want to invite you to come back as a vendor. So I'm really excited about that. I did get a double booth again, and this time I got part of the booth will be on a corner. So I don't have a full end cap like I did at Houston Fiber Fest, but I will have a corner. So I'm really excited about that. Again, kind of thinking about layout. I have until April, but the way time moves, that's going to be here probably before I know it. But I am thrilled that I got that booth and layout, and just thrilled to actually get accepted, because that, like I said, I don't ever want to take for granted. So that's what Roundtable Yarns, as far as festivals and things I'm going to, that's what I've been doing. The other thing that I've done, and I'm just gonna call this Roundtable Yarns because it's all kind of the business side of things, I had mentioned last time that I was preparing for a presentation to the Dallas Handknitters Guild all about, wow, I have the hiccups, all about yarn and talking about the number of plies, twist, fiber content, and all of those types of things. And so last week on Tuesday is when I did my presentation. It was a pretty big audience. I have to say, I don't know how many people were there, but I think 60 or 70 probably would not be far off the mark. Yeah, I think that's probably about right. So it was a really good crowd. Lots of familiar faces, a few faces that I did not know. But it was good to see some of you guys who watch the podcast even. So thanks for coming to that. I knew going into it that I had way more information than I had time. But I wanted to try to give as much information as I could. And I feel like I did that, maybe a little too much information. I mean, people did say that it was really fabulous and they learned a lot and they really enjoyed it. But I felt like I was just spewing forth all this information, and I don't know if I really gave people enough time to let it sink in. I did have a handout that had fairly detailed notes on it, so hopefully people could take that home and maybe remember some of the things I mentioned. And then I also had a list of resources, books that I recommend if they wanted to get more details. So I felt like it was just almost too much that I was throwing out, but there just is so much about yarn, and it is something that I want to talk more about. And I have had this kind of goal, dream, idea of having an online class that does all of this, that talks about yarn and gets into much more depth and detail. And my thoughts of having the setup of the class would be that there would be video lessons. So I would be talking to the camera, showing off different things about yarn. And then when somebody enrolled for the class, I would send them a kit in the mail so they would physically have samples of all the yarn that I was talking about in the class for them to make their own swatches and get the experience of the yarn. And in the presentation for the guild, I did give out some small samples, about 4 to 5 yards samples of many of the yarns that I talked about, so that people could take those home. But 4 to 5 yards is not going to get you a giant swatch. But at least it gives you a little bit to play with. But for an online class, it would be bigger amounts of yarn so that you could make the full-size swatches and do a lace swatch and a cable swatch. And if you're interested in color work or other types of things, then you could kind of see how the yarns, how they do in various types of projects. So that's kind of a goal that I have for myself. It is not something that I see happening anytime soon, because that is going to be a giant project and take a lot of time and energy, and quite frankly, investment monetarily as well. But doing the guild presentation has kind of helped push me forward a little bit more toward that goal. So again, I'm not ready to jump right into that project, but it definitely has gotten me excited about it again, and something that I definitely want to pursue, because honestly, I think that the yarn is almost the most important part of a project. That you can have the skills, you can have an amazing pattern, but if you pick a yarn that just does not work, it doesn't matter how skilled you are, how good the pattern is, your project is just not going to turn out like you want. And so I think that helping people figure out what yarn to use and what yarn not to use for projects is kind of one of the things that I really, really strongly feel called to do. So I think that this presentation was kind of just the start of that. I mean, I've been doing that a little bit, here and there, things like the podcast and my newsletters and whatnot, but really a concentrated effort on educating people about yarn and yarn selection. I feel like this guild presentation was the first bigger step forward in doing that. So that really is kind of like a life goal of mine. And so I'm excited to have started that, and I definitely want to keep that momentum going, and do that in some other ways as well. So at the end of the presentation, I had about 15 minutes or so for people to shop. I brought my yarn so that people could look at it and decide to buy some if they wanted to. And oh my gosh, I just kept it in the boxes that I keep the yarn in at home, and even in the bags that I keep it in, because since it was such a short time and we had to at the end be out of that room like really fast, I wanted to make it so it was easy to pack up. So people were like digging through the boxes and opening up the bags, and then when people were checking out, it was just kind of like they would lay the yarn on the table. I had my phone that I was checking out on. I would type it into the phone. They would throw me their credit card. I would insert the credit card, and it was just kind of a frenzy, a fast-paced frenzy. I was very excited that people were excited about the yarn, but it was also, I'll admit, not a great sales experience, because part of what I like to do is to actually engage a little bit more with people who are buying yarn. And I know that's not always, even at a fiber festival, there are busy times and it's not always convenient to talk to people. But I felt like I barely even was able to say anything more than, here's your total, here's your card back, can I get your signature? I mean, and that's kind of the, that was the scope of the interaction. So I wish there was maybe just a little bit more space to not have felt like it was just a, I guess frenzy kind of is the word, a little bit more relaxed, but I know that was a time issue. And I am very, very grateful that the guild allowed me to bring my yarn and allowed that time for me to sell it, because a lot of yarn went home with people. I was really happy about that. And I can't wait to see what people make with the yarn. So if you were at the guild and you bought something, and whenever you make something with it, let me know. There's a Ravelry thread in my Roundtable Yarns group that you can post pictures of finished objects, or if you're on Instagram, you can tag me or hashtag Roundtable Yarns, and let me know what you've been working on. Whether or not you've bought something from that guild meeting or just have some of my yarn, and you have a project. I love seeing that. That's my favorite part. Anyway, so that was kind of crazy. But before the sales frenzy started, basically I finished my presentation, and the guild president, Melissa, and then the person who was in charge of organizing the programs, Renee. So they presented me with a gift. So this is a project bag that was designed and made by Diana of Diana Couture. And you guys, I just wanted to cry when they gave this to me, because it is absolutely perfect. So I'm going to show you the back, because that shows you the fabric a little bit more. Look at that. We've got the knights and the swords and the lion even. So the current yarn club is Knight of the Lion, and the castle. And then the front, there is a pocket. So there's a pocket there. And then this, I believe, is the symbol of the Dallas Handknitters Guild. And it is a zippered bag, even though Diana mostly does non-zippered bags, and which I despair about because I love her bags. And right at the current moment, I can't do non-zippered bags because the cats, especially Wally, are crazy about the yarn. You guys saw that in the last podcast episode. Diana watches the podcast. Hi, Diana. And knows that. And so she made a zippered bag. I mean, gosh, you guys, every detail. Look at this little pole. Isn't that cute? Every detail. The fabric, the fact that it is a zippered bag. There's also inside, there's a little pocket, or two pockets inside as well. So just every detail about this is just absolutely perfect. and I was just blown away. I don't think it really fully registered at the meeting because I was still in that rush of, oh my gosh, I have so much information and I ran out of time and I didn't get to share it all. I was still kind of in that space, so I don't think that it fully sunk in right at that moment. But oh my gosh, this is just perfect. Absolutely perfect. So that was another reason I had to cast on. This is 3 sheets. That's the project in here. That's one reason I had to cast on that, because I absolutely had to put a project in this bag and use it right away. This is the bag that is not going out of the rotation. There will always be a project in this bag because I am always going to use it. So thank you, Dallas Handknitters Guild. Thank you, Diana. Fabulous, fabulous job. And I really enjoyed talking at the Guild. So speaking of guild talks, I do have another upcoming guild talk, this time for the Arlington Handknitters Guild, which is my guild that I am actually a member of, and I'm the vice president of the guild this year. And that means that I'm in charge of programs. And I felt kind of weird like scheduling myself for a program, but I had done a program last year and this is kind of a follow-up to that. But I put myself at the first program because sometimes the September meeting runs a little long and there might be not quite as much time for the program, and I didn't want to bring someone outside in to do that. So September 25th, making sure I have the dates right, September 25th, which is a Tuesday, is when I will be doing that presentation. If you are interested in the Arlington Handknitters Guild, we do not have a web page, but we do have a Facebook group where you can get some information, or you can just message me and I can tell you the information. Or if you're a part on my newsletter list, I've been posting that information in the newsletter. But we meet in the evening, and I will be doing a presentation on Ravelry. So last year I did a presentation on Ravelry as a database. So all of the information that you can find and how it can help you pick out projects and pick out yarn and pick out projects and yarn combinations. So this time I'm going to talk about Ravelry as community. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is going to be about the forums. I've realized that a lot of people just aren't comfortable with the Ravelry forums because they are set up a little bit different. Even if you are familiar with other online forums, these are set up a little bit differently from many of the other online forums. And then there are some people who just aren't used to online forums at all. And I've realized that that a lot of people don't use the Ravelry forums because they don't really know how. So some of it is going to be about that. I also have a few other little things that you can do on Ravelry that can help with community, such as the events finder and the yarn shop finder. So if you're traveling and looking for yarn shops, there's actually a yarn shop locator. So I'll talk about that. At least that's in the plan. And then with whatever time is left over, I will be doing a Ravelry Q&A. So people that are at the meeting can ask any question that they want about Ravelry. It does not have to be about community. So any question about Ravelry, and I will do my best to answer it. So I'm excited about that because I always love talking about Ravelry because I think it is... I really don't know where the knitting world would be without it. It really is, I think, very integral. And so I'm always surprised when people don't make full use of it. So definitely helping people understand how to use Ravelry and why they should. So that is, again, September 25th, looking at the calendar, making sure I get the right date. So basically I come back from the retreat that Monday, and then Tuesday is the guild meeting and the presentation. And then after that, I have a little bit of breathing room before the East Texas Fiber Festival. So anyway, that is what has been going on in the Roundtable Yarns and other businessy types of things in my life. So there is a question in the Questions for Karen thread. This comes from Christy Rose, who asks, do you belong to any professional associations for editing and proofreading? And are they worth it? So professional associations for editing and proofreading. Yes. Are they worth it? Yes. But obviously I will say more about that. So I wore this shirt, the Association of Independent Publishing Professionals. Wait, is that what it is? Yeah, the Association of Independent Publishing Professionals, AIPP. So this is one of the organizations that I am part of. And this was founded by a group of three, maybe more, copy editors and developmental editors who work with fiction. And although there are other types of projects that people work on, it does seem to be an organization that really does kind of focus a lot on fiction, which, since most of what I do besides supply stuff is fiction, is definitely the association that I think fits best with me. So some of the benefits are the discussions. So we do have a private Facebook group that you have to be a member of the organization to be part of. And if you have a question, it's really nice to be able to go over to that group and to get some answers. Because it is publishing professionals, it's actually not just editors. It is also, we've got formatters. We actually have a voice actor, somebody who does audiobooks, and other types of avenues of publishing as well. So it's nice to be able to get some advice, especially because most of us are working with independent authors, so authors who are self-publishing, and so sometimes they have questions, and so being able to have a network of people that you can talk to ask those questions, or also a network of people you can refer other people to, is beneficial. I actually just made use of it last week with a project that I've been working on, or maybe it was even this week, a project I've been working on where the author wanted to have a bunch of blank space, so a sentence and then a lot of blank lines and then another sentence. Just stylistically, that needed to happen. And so he was asking about, how do I format the text so that in an ebook, that space is going to stay there and not just get deleted. And so I was like, I don't know, but I can go over to the Facebook group for this association and ask, because I know there are formatters there, and maybe they will have some advice. And there was a bit of a debate about exactly what to do, but they did give me some concrete information that I could then go back to my author and share. So that is very helpful. This organization also has arranged various discounts for either software or other types of things that editors use. So you can subscribe to the online version of the Chicago Manual of Style, and through the organization I can get a discount on that, and then there are other things that are discounted. So that is nice. There are other editorial associations out there. One of the big ones is the EFA, Editorial Freelancers Association. Especially if you are in the US, that's probably the biggest association to join. If you are in the UK, there's SFEP, Society for Editing Professionals. That may not be the quite words, but it's SFEP. Excuse me. And I know that's a big one in the UK. Yes, there are multiple editing groups. And for a long time, I was a member of the EFA, the Editorial Freelancers Association. I just this past year decided to not renew my membership to the EFA. And that is not for any reason against the EFA. It's just that I personally have not been focused on editing quite as much as I have been in the past. I've not been seeking out a lot of new projects, and I mostly have been working with authors that I have worked with previously, rather than getting a lot of new authors in, because I'm finding that Roundtable Yarns is becoming what I want to focus on and where I want to bring my attention, and having editing projects on my desk as well is really a difficult balance. any of this that I'm saying does not apply to Ply Magazine. That I feel is kind of its own separate thing. I'm happy to continue doing that. I'm enjoying that work. So when I say I'm cutting back on editing, I'm not cutting back on the Ply stuff. But as far as editing fiction, I've cut way back on doing that. And so I felt that I wasn't using the things that the EFA provided, and because I have this other organization that I can ask questions to, I didn't really need the EFA right now, because there is a membership fee. So I felt like I did not need to pay that membership fee at the moment. If I'm getting back into editing more in the future, then I will rejoin the EFA, because I do think that it is something that is beneficial. So just a quick breakdown in case anyone is interested. Some of the things the EFA provides is a discussion list with people who have a wide range of experience. So that can be helpful. Sometimes some of the conversations do derail a bit. Anyway, that happens in most groups. There is the job list, where people who are looking for editors can post jobs, and then it is only available to members of the EFA, and then they apply to those jobs. There is also the member directory, where if somebody does not want to post a job, they could actually search the member directory, and you can search by specialization and find. So for example, I mostly focus on fiction, specifically fantasy. So if a fantasy author is looking for an editor, they can, do little check marks saying, I want to find editors who are specializing in fantasy, and I would be one of the ones that pop up. And they could contact editors directly instead of posting a job ad. And I did get several projects from people who searched the member directory, so I know that actually worked. There are a lot of classes that the EFA offer, online classes, and although non-members can sign up for the classes, if you are a member, you get a discounted rate. There is also a yearly conference that I, unfortunately, have never been to. It's in New York, and I just haven't gotten up there. A yearly conference for the EFA, and there are also discounts on things. And I believe I didn't need to use it, so I didn't look into it a lot, but I believe they have a group insurance rate that you can also, if you need to sign up for health insurance, you can go through the group rate of the EFA and get that set up. So there are definitely lots of benefits to a professional organization, and since I'm not using a lot of those right now, that's why I've let that membership lapse. But I am still a member of this organization, and it was very helpful, like I said, just last week, asking the question and getting the responses. So the answer to Christy's question, yes and yes. And there's a long-winded answer. There are also professional organizations for the craft industry. There is the, and just as soon as I said that, CIA, Craft Industry Alliance, is one of those organizations, and I am a member of that as well. And again, that offers things like discussion and discounts on various things, and a nice newsletter magazine that has articles. Some of the articles are available publicly, and some of them are members only. So I'm also a member of a craft organization like that. So good news on the reading front. My little trick that I mentioned last time of moving my Facebook app on my phone to a location that was harder to get to and putting my Kindle app where that Facebook app used to be has worked. I have actually done a lot more reading in the past 2 weeks than I have in quite a while. So I had started the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin, which I mentioned last time. That was the one that that trilogy has won 3 Hugos and award, which was something that I think was definitely the first time that a trilogy has won all 3. But I think it's either the only or one of the only ones that an author has won 3 Hugos, but especially in a row. Anyway, I started that one, and it is a good book, but it seems like it's a much more serious book. that's not quite the word that I want, but something that's going to take a lot of brain energy. And I've kind of been feeling that I want something a little lighter to read. Not necessarily has to be humorous, but definitely not heavy, I guess. So one of my favorite authors is Shanna Swenson. She wrote a series called Enchanted Ink, which is fabulous and I highly recommend. She also has another series called Rebel Mechanics. And that is another series that I really, really love. It is, so Enchanted Ink is basically a woman actually from Texas. Shanna Swenson actually lives in Irving, here in Texas. A woman who grew up in Texas, and she goes to New York City, and basically has a really horrible job, and then she gets this job offer for a magical firm, who basically designs spells and things, and she goes and takes that job, and there's a whole bunch of things that happen with that. So it's kind of fun because it's a modern day real world, but with magic. And so those are really good. Rebel Mechanics is a kind of a steampunk type of book. It is an alternate history where basically the revolution, brain just forgot words there, where the revolution never happened, and so the U.S. is still part of England, and the people who are in charge are the people who have magic, and then the people who are rebelling, who want to rebel against all of those in power, are the mechanics, the ones who are creating kind of the steampunk types of things. So it's a really interesting alternate history, a little bit of fantasy with the magic, some steampunk with the mechanics, and I'm really looking forward to the next book coming out, which I think she has finished writing, or maybe that's the one she still needs to write. I think she may have just finished another Enchanted Ink book. I read her blog, so I catch up on what she's reading. Anyway, so I am reading one of her books right now. She also has a series of books, the fairy tale series, which I don't enjoy quite as much as the other two series, but they're still pretty good. So I think it's the third book in that series I bought when it came out, and it's been out for a while, but I had not actually started reading it. So I did start reading that one, and that is the one that I'm in the middle of right now. And apparently I did not put it on the Kindle on my iPad. It is just on my phone. So I can't remember the exact title of that particular one. I'm scrolling through the books on my iPad. And like I said, I did buy it a while back. So apparently it is way down on my list. And I'm not saying that, but I will put it in the show notes. But anyway, it is the fairy tale series by Shanna Swenson. And so that's the one I'm in the middle of now, and I'm enjoying. And then I actually started and finished a book called Matchmaking for Beginners by Maddie Dawson. And, I had this set up so it would show the cover. Let me go back there. Show the cover. So, there it is. Matchmaking for Beginners. I think it's kind of a cute cover. There's a dog there. The dog figures into the story. So I heard about that book from Shanna Swenson's blog. Occasionally she posts things that she's been reading and what she recommends. And she said she recommended the book. It was kind of one of those, takes place in New York City, where there is a little bit of magic, not quite as overt as things that happen in her Enchanted Ink book, but a little bit of magic going on. And it basically is a woman who thought that she wanted one type of life and another life is kind of almost forced upon her, and she has to decide if this new life is actually what she is meant to be doing, or if she should go back to the old life and her old plans. But the magic part is that she is a matchmaker, somebody who can tell when two people belong to one another. As far as a love match. And she tries to kind of nudge that along to get people who belong together together. while at the same time, at the time, she herself is having a really, really horrible time in the romance department. So it is a little bit of a romance, but not like a really steamy type of romance. It's more of a lighthearted one. So it kind of met my goal of finding a book that was a lot lighter, a bit easier to read, something that I could dip in and out of. That I, if I had 5 minutes to read, I could read for 5 minutes, and then when that 5 minutes is up, I could put it down. I think that's the hard part with that other book. That's a little heavier. It's something that you really need to have a little bit more time that you can really get into, rather than just the 5 minutes here and there that I did for reading this book. Anyway, so Matchmaking for Beginners by Maddie Dawson. If you are looking for kind of a light romantic comedy's not quite the right word, 'cause it's not really hilariously funny, but there are definitely some comic moments in it. It's a fun book, and I recommend it. And then I recommend pretty much everything by Shanna Swinson, but definitely starting with Enchanted Ink. So that is what I have currently been reading. As far as watching, whatever season of The Great British Bake Off that was just dropped on Netflix. My husband and I are in the middle of watching that. And then we have some TV shows that'll be starting up in the next month as the new season gets underway. And I looked at my list of shows that I watch, and there really aren't that many. I think there are like 7 or 8 that are on the list. So I've kind of, funneled down my shows, and I don't watch a lot of actual live TV anymore. But there are shows that I'm looking forward to returning and getting to watch again. The Big Bang Theory, although this will be the last season apparently. But it'll be good to at least have one more season. And then Supernatural, which just seems to be going on eternally. And so I'm looking forward to those. And then the show that I still can't quit, Grey's Anatomy. We'll see how that goes this season, and whether or not I continue watching, which I'm sure I will, or if they do something that is enough to make me even pull the plug on that one. And then a couple of other shows in between. So depending on how those go, I might mention them in future podcasts. Maybe not. If there's nothing really remarkable to say about them, then I won't. And I'm, like I said, enjoying getting a little extra reading done by just making that little swap on my phone with the Facebook app. It does mean that I have not been on Facebook as much, so I think the entire weekend I didn't really check into my Facebook group, and I realized, on Monday I was like, oh my gosh, people have been posting, their how they did on their goals. On Friday they were posting projects that they had finished, and I did not go in there and check on those. So I do need to find a balance. There are reasons to be on Facebook, so I do need to make sure that I am checking in at least a little bit, especially to things like the group that I'm running. So I'm still working on that, but overall, it's nice to have more reading time. So don't forget about the Q3 knit along / crochet along. I mentioned the shawl that I finally started that I'm working on for that. This quarter ends on September 30th. So if you are participating and you want to be entered for the prize drawing, which was that skein of sport weight yarn from Toil and Trouble I showed on the previous episode. So if you want to be entered in that drawing, make sure you post in the FO thread by the end of the day, September 30th, because I will be doing the drawing on October 1st. And as far as the next, I'm looking at the calendar, as far as the next theme, I probably should post the nomination thread before I go to the retreat next week, so I can make sure I'm able to have access to the internet to at least post the thread. And probably when I come back from the retreat, so I'll be back on the 24th, back into the swing of things on the 25th, I will probably post the voting thread about then. So look for the nomination thread between now and Monday, probably will be when that pops up, and thinking about the theme for Q4. But anyway, Q3, we're still in still have a couple more weeks for that. And there have been some FOs, so I wanted to make sure to show those off on the podcast. You can always go to the FO thread on Ravelry and see the pictures without the glare that you'll see on the screen here. But Manda B finished my Laudine shawl, which is a pattern that has not gotten much love at all. So I appreciate the fact that Manda B went ahead and knit this. She did modify it some. In my shawl, I actually have several colors doing a striped body that does kind of a chevron pattern, and so she did a single color, and then I just have a regular ruffle, and she did a pleated ruffle, which I think basically is like doing ribbing type of thing, and yeah, so that's very pretty. And I like seeing the modifications and what Laudine has become. LC99 did a Stumpton shawlette, and this I think is something that really makes good use of a variegated yarn, because it's kind of a very meshy type of eyelet pattern, and so that helps kind of distribute the colors a little bit so they're not kind of all clumped together. It kind of breaks them up a bit. So I think that looks really great. I Now Our did a Kiss Shawl Stradivarius. So this is a stripy shawl, and I really love the colors that she picked. I think those work really well together. So that is an FO. AC Sparky 89 did the name of the pattern is Batik Shawl from Very Busy Monkey. This was a sport weight shawl, and she actually used my Tristan yarn, and really, really love the design in that shawl. Isn't that gorgeous? Love all of that. So I think that is a really pretty shawl. And then PTM Smith did the Turtle Trail Shawlette, and this also was using some of my yarn. I believe it was the Grail base, but it's in a Yarn Club color that went out in the previous Yarn Club. So there is that. It has I think it's a garter body. Yeah, looks like garter with a lace border, and I really like shawls like that. And I think that turned out really nice as well. So you guys have done some really fabulous projects so far. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is great. I'd love to see some more. But otherwise, there's at least some people who are in the running for the prize for the knit-along. So I'm looking forward to seeing if there are any more projects that get posted, and then who wins the yarn. So make sure you're posting that. Come over to the chat thread. Let us know what you're working on, and what we can potentially anticipate seeing in that FO thread. And that should do it for this episode. Thank you so very much for watching, and if you have any comments, questions, you've got 2 places that you can go to leave those comments. You can either post right here under the YouTube video. YouTube does like that because it shows that people are actually watching and engaging with the video, so I appreciate that if you comment here, because it helps other people find the podcast. And or you can post over in the Ravelry group for the podcast. There is a specific discussion thread for each episode. There's also the questions for Karen thread. If you want to post a question you would like me to answer, feel free to do that there. But if you have anything on this particular episode, go over to the discussion thread for the episode, and you can talk about it. There's also the knit-along threads, so you can post there if you're participating there. So I've said in multiple episodes, especially recently, that is really my favorite part of the podcast. It's not just sitting here in front of my camera showing off things that I've been knitting and talking about what I've been doing. It really is the interaction, the conversation that you guys bring. So please comment here on YouTube and or on the Ravelry group. and let's get some conversation going. I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you have ever participated in a competition knitting event like Tour de Sock, how did you feel about it? How did you handle the stress? Is that something you would ever be interested in working on? I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear some book recommendations for light-ish types of books. I really am a fantasy reader, but I like some of those kind of modern day things that have the magic elements in it. I enjoy reading those. So you have any recommendations, that would be awesome. And then just anything else that you would like to say about this episode. I hope to hear from you. So until next time, happy knitting.